welcome to another episode of Profiles in a Life of Purpose. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking to Emmitt Muckles. Emmitt is an interesting man in many respects, and we're going to learn a lot more about just why that is today. He works for a company called Fronius. That's an innovation and technology company where he is a trainer. And Emmitt spends a lot of his time on his website and podcast called The Billionaire Lifestyle, which, if you start thinking it's about money, listen, because there's a lot more about it that you'll learn. I translate it in my language as being about abundance, but we'll hear what Emmitt has to say about it. So, welcome, Emmitt. Thrilled to have you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's synergy because when I met you, and I forgot how we initially met, but I just knew there was something we had to do together.
And here we are. So we're
That's
talking about
true.
all these great concepts. I'm thrilled. So, Emmitt, I remember hearing from you and then learning more that you are from Detroit. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I'm a Detroit boy, born and bred. It's Michigan is in my heart all the time, and I learned a great deal from that atmosphere that I can transpose and take everywhere with me.
And I think and that's one of the reasons I wanted to hear more about it, because I think where we're from shapes us in so many ways, and we have choices about that. So please share why you think that that's important to where you are now and how it did shape you.
So for one thing, I came up in an era that was in turmoil change. So I was born in the 60s, like right as the civil rights movement was at its apex. And so I got to see how the country began to transform a wee bit from that. And then in the 80s, we had in this urban community, we had this influx of drugs called crack cocaine. So a lot of my generation, those people who were of my age group, are no longer with us because they're either in one of two places if they survive. I mean, if they survived, but they might be in one of two places other than that, which is they've transitioned onto the other plane or they're in jail. And part of my thing was to navigate that thanks to my mom and my parents. I was able to see a different perspective of life, and I was a different kind of kid. So my parents were able to kind of bolster that, let me use my imagination, my intelligence to be who I am and be who life calls me
I happen to know in the process there's a lot more that goes on. So, can you explain a little bit about how you were? I think the words that you used were the sort of person I was, or the sort of kid that I was. What kind of kid were you?
So I was a kid and I'm still this kid a lot today. Is I was very inquisitive. I really wanted to understand. I knew that when I came here to this planet, I knew there was a lot to learn. I mean, literally, there was so much to learn, and I'm still just digest. I'm like this human sponge who can't get enough. And it's in everyday things, it's in everyday people. And one of the things that fascinates me most, and I had this conversation with a CEO today. He asked me about me again, and I said, you know what? There's one good thing. I love human beings. I actually love human beings. I don't necessarily trust human beings. That's part of where I come from too, because you're navigating an urban environment. And I lived in an environment where they said, where I constantly heard, you're a minority, you're a minority. I lived in the inner city of Detroit up until I was about 15 years old. All I saw were people who looked like me, or if they didn't look directly like my skin tone, they still had my swagger, as they speak. We had the same communal kind of feel to it. It wasn't only till I moved out to the suburbs that I got a dose of reality, and I went through this kind of awakening and what do we like it to call it? Where culture shock. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, snap. Holy wait a minute, maybe what they were saying is valid. So my world got bigger. And this is one of the points that I try to impart upon people consistently is that we see the world through our own eyes. And it's only when you can get out of your environment and you can see that there's more to it than your eyes are used to, that you can begin to see the world reflect back and look at the world, look at yourself in the world from another perspective. And that will help you navigate and realize that there's so many opportunities for you and that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And with that physical experience comes me meeting wonderful people like you. I mean, like we were just walking by each other and I asked you a question, and that led to a conversation that was like maybe an hour, hour and a half long, where we shared knowledge with each other.
Mhm.
And you simply asked me a question, and I was like, I can help you with that. And from there, now the karma is coming back where you're coming out and saying, like, Emmett, I need to introduce you to this audience. I need to introduce you to these people. So that's kind of like the billionaire lifestyle. When you realize that the world is very big, the world is very broad, and you're connected to literally all of it. Like, even right now, you're in a different state. I'm in Indiana, but there is air about this planet that we both share. So we're still connected.
Mhm. One world. Um, okay, we're going to get to the Billionaire Lifestyle, which is the name of your website and podcast, but we're still in Michigan. We're still in the 15-year-old Michigan world right
Yeah.
now in my question. So
Yeah.
I want to know, because I'm very curious about the journey, because I think that's where a lot of curiosity comes in when people are trying to figure out what their purpose is and how they get there.
Yeah.
So I think it's very helpful to dissect it sometimes and to look back at not just that nice progression and the end, but what's in the middle of it too. Was that period of time at 15 when you began to have that awareness of the oneness perhaps of culture shock and how it all came together? Was that your first aha moment of the other side of things, or
It wasn't so much an aha as a slap in the face. It was like, what? What? Huh? I don't I had like about a year or two of that. But during that time, I was extremely inquisitive because I played in these bands. I played guitar and I played bass. I played with choirs. I mean, high level stuff as a 15-year-old. Also during that time, hip hop is coming into play. So I got into like dancing and forming dance groups. I mean, I was always an intellectual and creative at the same time. But, during that 15 year, that period where I transitioned from the inner city to the suburbs, life got really dangerous for someone who was on a straighter path. There were a lot of temptations. So my mother moved us out to the suburbs. And a lot of that I transferred, except it opened the world. So before, where I was playing gospel music and funk music, now I'm introduced to AC/DC. I'm introduced to Dawkins. I'm introduced to all these things like Aerosmith that I was on the fringe, but I never really paid attention to it. So the world started opening up. And then I met a friend who was into really progressive jazz, who was a very right brain person. I mean, he was from another planet. He was boundless. And I start taking that in as well, that like all these things are available to you. Some people, they're more accessible, but they're available to us all. We just have to go for it. We have to travel a path, and as we get down this path, open the doors that are on the path to see what's behind the door, because you may not stay there, but that experience stays with you. And from there, I became a young man and got finally started working and making my way in the world so my mom would have to take care of me. Met a young lady who was going to Purdue College, which said, and her and another friend were like, "Hey, you should really pursue college. You should pursue a higher education." And my passion was always sciences and electronics.
Mhm.
So that was the avenue I took. And that kind of led me, was the backbone of my facilitation through the years because it's always sustained me even when I wasn't so-called employed for other people because I had a skill. And once you realize that things are more than just the myopic view that us humans try to look at, you realize all the potential that is available for you. So I started like several small businesses or solopreneur businesses when I was very young so that I could sustain my living habits. And during that process, it teaches you more things. It's like walking a path, and as you take a step, there's no brick in front of you that you can see. But as soon as you put your foot down, there's another brick for you to step.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it me. But let's not get it wrong. It was dangerous at times because of the environments I was in. And it was dangerous on both sides because of when I was in the city, it was driven by a drug culture that was permeating young the entrepreneurs got this idea that they could use really young men and women to sell their drugs because they won't be prosecuted. But that took out a whole generation. Then when I moved to the suburbs, I started finding out I was different. And people would let me know, you're different and I don't like you just because you're different. And that gave me ammunition, along with this book that I read when I was 17, How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Mm-hmm.
how to navigate that and let people know that, hey, look, man, or whoever, I am just like you. I just have a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Um, what of all those was the point when you decided you wanted to start giving to others? Because on your website, it's very clearly stated that a big part of your desire in life is to give your knowledge and serve others. When was that decision made for you?
I think that really started to hone itself when after my mom died, because I had amassed a great deal of intelligence by doing various things. And I can remember that I went to work for this corporation, this casino, MGM Grand, and I was a manager there. And there were people who didn't quite have some of the understandings of the workings of the casino business or just basic stuff. And I was always contributing, like, hey, you're having trouble with that. Let's just sit down. Let's go over it. Let me explain how this works and see if you can build upon that. If you ever need anything else, just come let me know. And this is one of the foundations that I've always kind of adhered to. I don't expect to get my fruit from where I plant my seed.
Mm-hmm.
So just because I do something here doesn't mean I expect a return from you. My return may come from some other place altogether. And it's not even that I expect it, I just know that it will come from living this life. So a lot of it started in my late 20s, 30s, after I had become centered in myself, understood who I was and what I had to offer other people. But I never was boisterous about it. If I saw someone in need, then I gave out that help. I never said, "Hey, I'm going to help you," because I found out that can be rather dangerous. It can backfire.
So, when did you start the website and podcast? And was that the first effort that you made to publicly give of yourself in such a big way?
No, actually, I started podcasting in 2008,
Pink,
first time.
Pink Shots, was that your
No,
first?
that's my wife's podcast.
Okay, all right.
I've had like 5 podcasts in the interim. I started out with just because I was a musician and I wanted to spotlight musicians. And so I had this podcast where musicians and bands around the world would send me their MP3 files and I would play them and talk about them, interview them if I could, just to promote them because the radio stations were kind of a closed group. And there's a lot of talented people that need, access to the public. So I was like, hey, we have this new medium that's out. it hasn't hit its tipping point. To me, it had. It was like, I just got it. I was like, this is better, best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And started doing that, but I didn't understand the analytics. I didn't understand the, everything with it. And I wasn't quite mature enough. But with the billionaire lifestyle, what I did was I understood the entire premise of it, which means, A, you have to just do that thing that most people don't, which is once you have a thought, you have to take action. And, and so for me to take action, which was get the website, tie it to my domain that I already had, start to line up guests and produce the products. But that's not the most important. That's the most important thing to start. The second part is to stay with it. Because when you do something like this, unless you're a known name, a household name, it doesn't take off overnight. And I said, you must just persevere and keep doing good work, because then the fruits will come, which means, and it's not necessarily fruits for me, it's that people recognize something in someone that I'm interviewing. They can identify and say, I can do that, or I've been there, or I understand that situation. And it may just inspire them to move on to find out what their billionaire lifestyle is about.
Hmm. Who are you wanting to reach?
I'm really wanting to reach those people who have an inner desire to fulfill themselves, to be happy. And happiness is individual. Happiness is as individual as our DNA. And that's what most people have a problem comprehending, is because we're programmed by television and media to think success is a finite window of things, when it is very much as diverse as the planet. Because for some people, yeah, they want cars, shiny cars, and big houses. Other people want a tiny house and live out in the woods with no one around them. And
Hmm.
they don't even want a car. They want to be able to just bike or walk wherever they have to. Some people just want to be able to watch their kids grow up in safety. There's a lot of different things. And I want that to be the essence of the billionaire lifestyle, where you say, this guy has a lot of people on his show, a lot of different things, and he's talking about a lot of different topics. Well, that's who we are. And when people ask me, I'm not a billionaire, and I go, lies, I can prove it to you in 10 seconds. So I'm going to prove it to you. So all I need you to do is hold your hand up like this. Hold your hand up.
Oh, you want me to? Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Now, between the tip of your finger, the longest finger, and where your hand and wrist meet, that's one kind of organ. How many cells do you think are contained within this area to this area?
How many which? How many what?
Cells, human
Cells.
cells.
Oh, geez, I
Yes.
don't know. Trillions.
Yes. So that means you're already a billionaire. You can put your hand down now. So you're already a billionaire. So now it's time for you to recognize all the power that comes with that. So if you have an imagination, if you have desires, if you have the means to take any kind of action, whether it's the smallest thing, whether it's just reading up on that which you don't know, then you have the power to transform your life. You literally have the power to be, do, experience. And that's the key word in life, is experience that which you can conjure.
Hmm. I agree with you, and it's really powerful. Um, how did you come up with, because billionaire is evocative of money? For me, when I read your materials, I, as I said in the beginning, translated as abundance, whether it's money or love or something else that somebody equates to their happiness, is how I translate it. But it is very evocative for many people of money. How did you come up with that name?
Well, one of the things about the human body is we are comprised of so many systems, and those systems interplay with each other. And in addition to that, billionaire or billions wasn't even in our lexicon of language as a staple until recently. So I could say the millionaire lifestyle. I could say the thousandaire lifestyle, but it doesn't have the impact to make you say, huh? But when you say billionaire lifestyle, you're like, what does that mean? What is that? But you know it's abundant. You know it has all the things that you need contained in it. And one of the premises behind it, to go back to its origin, was think about a billionaire. Think about Bill Gates. Think about anybody who's a billionaire. That person is not worrying about the money. That person is usually doing that which their heart dictates, whether that helps somebody learn something or promote goodwill.
One of the, I think it might even be your tagline on the website, is about Trinity,
Yes.
which I thought was lovely. And I'm not even going to try to paraphrase it. Will you repeat how is it perfecting Trinity?
Yeah. So part of it is perfecting your Trinity. And in that, we usually concentrate on one of the three or two of the three, but never all three at the same time,
And
or never consciously circle them in or, rotate them and work on them.
and for the
So either,
listeners who haven't seen your website, the Trinity are in your on your website are body, mind, and soul.
yes.
Okay.
So we're working on one of those. And I'm sorry I didn't explain that. We're working on one of them. For instance, right now, at the early part of the year, everybody's going to be working on the physical part of the body, because they're going to make these resolutions and then they're going to go to the gym. And then later on, they're going to deal, that's going to peter out. And then Easter's going to come around. So they're going to be kind of spiritual. And then um, your soul. Now, there's an exercise that I recently learned, and it happened on, I was watching KRS-One. So this is not mine, but it's so powerful. And he held up a picture of a Red Bull sign or one of those monster drinks. And he said, I want you to look at this and I want you to say it to yourself without saying it with your lips. I want you to just say it in your head. And he said, on the count of three. And so, you heard the silence and everybody probably said Red Bull. And then he said, who is that? Who is that said Red Bull? It wasn't you because your lips didn't move, but you heard it said. So that's the other part that we want to work on, is that deep person that is controlling your own matrix. I always think of it like Men in Black, when they opened up the guy's face and there was this little bitty being inside this guy's head who was like working all the controls. That's who you hear. So that lets you know, that is concrete evidence that you have a Trinity. You have a mind, you have a body, and you have a spirit. So the mind is that thing that kind of keeps this in balance, keeps the body working, you know. The body is the physical presence on earth. But then deeper than that is the soul, that thing that connects us when we're dreaming, that thing that really makes you fall in love, that thing that makes you feel familiar with someone when you see them, even though you've never physically met them on this plane. So there's a connection. And if we can harness all that, things are unlimited to us. Once you connect all three of those together, you've hit that almost completion. That's how you ascend, is learning all the things for all three of those pieces.
So on your website, you say perfecting body, mind, soul. Are your messages and your teaching tools to help people learn how to do that? Is that what your objective is?
In some ways I try, but most of mine is to inspire you
Okay.
to just begin the dialogue with yourself about it,
Okay.
because it's individual to all of us. What's
Right.
spiritual to you is not spiritual to me.
Right.
What your soul feels like, the color, the aura, the
Mhm.
age of it is different than mine. And I just recently learned this, like there's new souls on the planet versus old, that term old soul.
Mhm.
Uh, Everything is fluid and everything is different, but it's the same. It's very similar experiences, and we can pull from these other people that we identify with when you hit that mark. For instance, with my podcast, I said, to press, and that's what I want you to keep trying. When I say perfecting, not perfected, that means you're trying to do better. You're trying to be better. So it's perfecting, which is moving forward, having that momentum, at least starting. Like I said, a lot of it just comes down to once you get the thought, then you move on to the action.
You're in the process. And speaking of inspiration, I know you have a book called Journey of One. Was that also an inspirational book? I'd love to hear the origin of it and also what your biggest hope was. Yeah, you're laughing. I
So,
talk.
yeah, I'm laughing because I can remember how it came about. And I had this bucket list item back in 2007 that I wanted to accomplish. 2006, 2007, which was write a book. I didn't know anybody who wrote a book. So I was like, I'm going to write a book. I didn't have anything to write about. So I mulled over it for about a month. I was like, I'd love to write a book. Nothing came to me, nothing. Literally, I was sitting at work one day and it downloaded into my head at 2:45 p.m. By the time I got home, I whipped out my computer and started typing. I typed for 2 weeks straight. I was in the shower with my arm out, typing. I was eating breakfast. I was typing. And the story is about a young man who is playing baseball in an urban environment. So there was this thing that I experienced myself, and I I was a really small kid. I'm not anymore, but I was a small kid then. So I could pick someone who would hit for me and I would run to the bases. So I picked this person to hit, but I stood too close to them and they swung back and knocked all this out, like when
Ouch.
I was a kid. So
And
I
you're
had this,
pointing to your teeth.
yes, it knocked like this tooth out and split me in half. That's the basis for the start of the journey because from there, the character Marcus is transported to a different world. It's very similar to the one, it's a neighborhood, but there he meets this soul guide. It's actually him. And the character's name is One, spelled O apostrophe N-E, which is one.
Hmm.
And it's like one of those things because my parents were divorced. You're always looking for a guide that is like yourself. And I conjured this person up. What I was looking for when I was a kid was this person to come and say, look, life is really simple. It's really hard, but it's really simple. But there's these principles that you have to own for you to navigate it with as much ease as possible. Now, that's not saying it doesn't come with these other things that may influence you, but he gives these principles and he also introduces him to the tree of hopes, dreams, and ideas. And it's this big tree that is as tall as mountains. It goes into the earth as deep as it is tall. It has this fruit that glistens, and everybody has something on there. And when that idea is ripe, it sparkles and comes off the tree to you, which is your idea. But it only comes to you at the right time. This is just part of the later part of the book. But a lot of this is great for like single moms with little boys because nowadays, I hate to say it, little boys are being kind of pushed to the background. They're saying they're too raunchy, too rambunctious, but that's just the nature of boys. And we also sit them in classes for extended period of time. But all this is available to boys and girls to let them know that that world of wonder that we had when we were children is still here. It's just that we've been programmed out of it. And if we can just tap back in, going back to the billionaire lifestyle, all that comes into play. So for 2000, ouch, I keep hitting myself. So for 2018, the billionaire lifestyle is going to morph. And it's going to morph into the billionaire lifestyle 360 pie, which is 360 degrees and the pie of it so that you have access to the full circle.
Nice, nice. Now, how will that change your podcast and the website and offerings that you're giving?
It doesn't. It just opens us up to more. It's building the picture. So with the first year of the Billionaire Lifestyle, I kind of sketched out the images that are on the canvas.
Mhm, mhm, I understand.
Now I'm framing the canvas up. And with each year, I'm going to add colors to it. It's going to grow. So I'm letting it grow organically versus dictate it's just this. Because over time, things change, just like our life. I mean, I can remember when no one had a cell phone.
Mhm,
Now, everyone, including kids, has a cell phone. As a matter of fact, I remember when you had a phone that had a really squiggly cord that probably went 50 feet, and that's how you communicated. And we did fine. We think now if we go back to that, we just lose our minds, but things just change. Things
mhm.
just morph into, and over time, we literally go back. So we're going to go here and we'll end up right at this point again. Because here's one of the things I was thinking on the way here is that historically, we probably have forgotten more than we already know on this planet.
It's an
And
interesting
so,
thought.
yeah, because if you go back to the days of Kemet and Sumer or Egypt, before the Dark Ages, we don't even have record of how wonderful their life might have been. They might have had many more wonders than we've experienced. So that always lets me know we've probably forgotten more than we know.
Mhm. It's very possible, yeah, and who we don't know, right?
Right.
What in your book, which sounds lovely, and we'll make sure to have the details of it in the show notes, um, you mentioned children wanting that guidance, those answers. Who did you have when you were a child to look to for answers? Were there people that were influential in your life to help you?
My dad was extremely influential to me because my dad was slightly different than everyone. In the fact, one thing he read books. And I remember him saying to me, I used to read these science books and these books about stuff. And he said to me one day, he's like, you really should read autobiographies. And I was like, I think I was probably like 10. So like, why would I read an autobiography? Because he was reading the autobiography of Henry Ford at the time. And right after that, he was reading the autobiography of Sidney Poitier. And he said, because when you read autobiographies, you really get a sense of someone's experience. You get to live their life through them. So you can add that to your arsenal. So when you come up against similar obstacles, you have a wealth and a library to actually pull from experiences that you've never really had, but someone took the time to write it down so that you can access it. And he said also to me when I was about 8 or 10 years old, he says, if there's anything you typically want to know, there's a high probability that someone wrote about it. And he gave me a library card.
And then you had all the influences you could ever hope for in a library
Oh
card.
my, yeah, my mom used to get really pissed because she used to always take the books back late.
So did you find similarities in the books that you were reading then with the journey you were on as a child?
Well, I read a lot about scientists, and then later on, I began to read about human beings in scenarios and fiction. And in situations, I found the books relatable. So like I said, I always had that to pull from. And I'm like, I don't know why I know this experience, but I know how to navigate it slightly because I've had this. Let's say, for instance, Sammy Davis Jr. I read his autobiography,
Mhm,
and he went through some really tough times.
mhm.
Frank Sinatra said if he wasn't a man of color, he'd be the biggest star on the planet at the time. So, when I get upset at something, I think about Sammy Davis Jr. and what he had to go through. I think about my dad and what they had to go through. So I just say to myself, slow your roll, pump your brakes. Everything for you will come in its own time.
Mhm. Like the fruit on the tree in your book.
Yeah. Sometimes and there's an instance where Marcus is trying to take his fruit because he sees it, but he's not old enough to get that yet. It's just starting to ripen. And he
Mhm.
goes for it. And One has to take him away from the situation, and Marcus gets really mad at him, and he starts to have a tantrum. And One calms him down and says, "Look, it's just not your time. Everything comes in its own time."
It's interesting that the book has a child in it learning. And from what you said about the website and the podcast, that wasn't something that was your focus in your teaching. Do you focus on working with children and helping them in life as well?
Not at this point, because we live in a weird circumstance when it comes to children. Like, the parents have to ingratiate their children. Mine is about teaching that abundance. So if I can reach the adult, then hopefully they will spread that to the children, because children are the most powerful creative creatures on this planet. And I actually remember a time as a conscious creator as a child. I remember how my toys were so real to me. I remember how my drawings were so real to me, and I can't get back to that magic. And I wonder how that happened. And it comes from, you know, trying to fill these shoes that someone says you must fill. It's like, oh, you can't do that. That's kid stuff. Well, that's the magic of life. So all those creative people that we are like, wow, it's because they've tapped into that child sense, and they can pull that out of the ether and bring it into the real. They have the, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to just think it up, and I know it's real. I just have to figure out how to let these other people see it, or make it so that the other people can see it. And it's simply that. It's making it so the rest of the world can experience what you already see.
Mhm. Great. Um, what else is there that you'd like to create besides
I'd like to,
coloring in? You talked about
actually,
coloring in the box. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'd like to create a community.
Ah,
And I want to find these people like you. I want to find the people who have that resonant, who have that drive, who have that love for each other, where I totally see your potential, and I just want to experience that potential. And I want you to see and experience my own potential, so I can access and augment and bolster your life. So it's literally a community, because the safest point that we are is when we are in that safe less than 250 community. If you don't know what that means, I say we only have the capacity to really remember 180 to 250 people. And if you look at that, those small pockets of those, that's where power comes from, because then you can multiply your energy, because you find your little community, you all have very similar aspirations, which means everything can come that much faster.
mhm. And yeah, exponentially, it just multiplies from there. Right. I understand.
Yeah.
Um, how do you relax with all those goals to accomplish?
This is my relaxation. Actually, talking to people, creating is a great relaxing tool. For instance, on my podcast, I create all the music. I literally write, compose, record, edit, pop that in. Then I mean, just being a human being and having this human experience is relaxing to me. Every once in a while, I literally kill my batteries and I have to just do nothing.
Mhm.
But I can only do that for so long, because I literally feel ill if I don't move, if I'm not in motion. My wife says I'm like a shark. You know, sharks have to move to stay alive. She says, you have to move. She's like, even when you're sitting still, your mind is working so hard and so fast that, it's just your body's chilling out while your mind's preparing you for the next episode.
Well, as a creative person, and I do believe all humans are creative. We're some are just more tapped into it actively.
Yeah.
As a musician that you are, you're creatively doing that with your podcast. Are you finding other outlets for the music?
I mean, they come up sporadically because a lot of people know that I play music. So, for instance, and I played in San Francisco with the Solar Battle of the Bands this year,
Cool.
and every once in a while, someone asked me to come DJ at some event because I was a DJ too. Like I said, I've done a lot of things because a lot of things interested me, and so I've amassed all these things now, and it's just important for me to let everyone know that I can. So if, like I said, if you need me, I'm here. All you have to do is say, "Hey, Emmett, I need you over here."
One of the thoughts that I have found really powerful is that um, the clearer we are of putting our message out, the more clarity we can receive in being asked. So if you were to, like you said, you're available to help. If you were to put on a billboard, this is what I'm available to do to help, what would that billboard say?
Oh my goodness. So my billboard would say, "Hi, if you need someone, we have someone. His name is Emmett. He's here to listen. He's here to help you extract. He's here to create your music and let it and play music for you. He's here just to understand, and he's here to learn from you."
That's beautiful. Okay, there,
That's honest though.
I know, and that's why it's so beautiful. And this is a billboard. It just went out across the sound waves. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because there are some people who are like, "I need some music for my podcast." I'm like, "Here you go." And they're like, "I don't like that." I was like, "Well, here's 5 other ones. Pick the one you want. Give me the rest back."
I loved and I understood your comment that the timing wasn't correct. And I know that happens with various things. But I love the concept of your earlier podcast of giving an opportunity to musicians. Um,
Yeah.
is that something that would come back, that podcast in another life form?
Well, the problem with that is legality
Oh,
because, now for me, I mean, back then I would just literally, "Hey, I have a podcast. Send me your music." People are like, "Cool. I'll send you my music." Now I have to send out release forms. Like, for instance, my podcast, The Billionaire Lifestyle, is on Spotify. So if it's not music that's pod safe music, I can't play it. And so a lot of things come into play just because it's music, because someone owns that. And it's not always tied to one person. It might be tied to, well, this person wrote the melody of it. This person wrote all the piano parts and this person sang it or wrote the words. So now I have to find all these people just to say, "Can I play this song?"
oh, so then you're spending a lot of time in the logistics of it and less with the musicians themselves.
Correct.
Yeah. I would almost think, just thinking off the top of my head, be more fun to get together for a quarterly jam.
That can happen. What do you play?
Nothing, nothing. My husband plays piano really well, and I play so badly that although he won't admit it, I think it actually hurts his ears to hear me play.
That's okay. We'll give you some spoons.
I do other things, but I do not play an instrument. No.
Sometimes it's just about enjoying. Sometimes you may be, and this is how life works. You may think, "I'm not inclined," but you may have an ear.
No, my talents aren't in music; they're in other areas. I'm
It's
very
fine.
creative, but in not in music.
Well, other people, I mean, and that's like that 7 layers of intelligence. Like you have a different spatial awareness. Like me, I'm a cluttery person and everything's everywhere, but I always get the project done. Where I have friends who are very neat and they're very orderly and things have to go in a fashion. I'm like, whatever goes, as long as just leave me alone, I'll get it done.
Hmm. 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 If One was here telling you your next in unfolding in life, Would he say there was a book for you ahead? Another book?
You know, I think there's some more experiences I have to have before it comes out because I could force it. I don't want to force it because actually I'm at the age of where One would have kind of been in the book. So now I can look back. But one of the things that always kicks me is I always tell my friends, I was like, if I die today, and they said, okay, we're sending you back. I was like, can you send me back as that guy? Because that guy had it going on and it was fun. I got some more things to do as being that guy, which is Emmett. Versus I realize, and I've been able to tap into this lately, is that you come back or you can have the ability to come back here or to go somewhere else. Because if you think that we're alone, that's kind of narcissistic, where you may have a totally different experience in a totally different realm because we only see these three or four dimensions, but there may be another dimension that there's an experience. And I'm just enjoying this one so much because I mean, literally a couple months ago, I walk up on this beautiful woman and she looks like, hey, what's going on? I'm like the things over there, what's going on in your life? You're like, hey, I do a kind of a video thing. And we sat down and talked. The next thing you know, we're helping each other out. Now you're helping me out. So life is that dynamic. If if you're bored, and I always say this to people, if you feel like you're at the end of your rope, literally, you're like, I can't take anymore. Just look down at the end of that rope and hopefully there's a little bit hanging off. So if there's a little bit hanging off, just tie a knot on there so you can just keep hanging for a while because then you're going to find the strength to pull yourself back up. That's what life is about. Just wait. Something wonderful is going to happen, particularly if you expect it.
Emmett, were you able to help some of the people that you knew early on hold on to that knot?
Yeah, I found out sometimes I found out people actually told me, and you never know who's watching you.
Right.
You never know who you're going to influence. And I can remember at least one or two circumstances where this came like slapped me in the face. There was a young guy that I met. He was 19 years old. He was a keyboard player in church. And I think I was 29 or 30. No, I had to be at least 30 when I met him. Anyway, we became kind of friends, and I invited him over to my house. And I had just purchased a home. We had a swimming pool. I had two kids and a wife, and we kind of drifted apart. So one day I was back in town, and I remember where his church was. And I walked in, he was actually playing. He says, I don't even come here that much, but he stopped the service in the middle, and he came over to me. He was like, ladies and gentlemen, this man influenced me to be who I am today. I was like, what? Afterwards, he told me, he's like, look, I had never seen a young black man who had his own home, had a wife, had children. You had a house with a swimming pool. You let me know it's accessible. I was like, but your father's a known pastor. He's like, yeah, but I didn't identify with him. I identify with you because you gave me a different vision. And you let me know that all I have to do is work for it, see it, and I can have it. He's like, and I have it today. He's like, I use you as my picture. And I was like, I was flattered. And there's been other people that said, you don't know how you've influenced me. And I'm like, me, my goofy self. So you never know who's watching you. So it's best to be the best you, the best good, virtuous you that you can be, because you never know who you're going to inspire just by being you.
Well said. And how do you, I don't know if this is a good way to ask this, but what I, how do you wear that? That's a heavy mantle to wear, knowing that the prospect is that you can be influencing people.
Well, it's really, it's not. It's a program, and it was a program that started in 1966 with Emmitt and Juanita Muckles because they who are my parents. And they separated. So I never really knew my mom and dad literally living together, but they were good friends even though they were divorced. And they were very honest with me in their dialogue, telling me about life and what life had in store. But they were very good people. When tough times came, they were honest about it. They're like, this sucks. I'm having a hard time. And I don't mean for you to have a hard time. It's just that I'm having a hard time. So I'm sorry if this comes off wrong. Your job, and my parents would tell me this often, your job is just to be the best you. And the best you says, don't hurt anybody. Don't take anything from anybody. Be yourself. Be the best that you can be. Try your hardest. And there were several lessons that reinforced that. I remember I was taking karate and it got really rough. I was just like, not. And my mom said, you're going to stick with this until you finish it. And it seemed hard at the time, but those lessons stick with you. Like, and then I saw the progress because I'd hit a slight bump, but I got over that hill and things got easier. Those lessons translate into later life where I remember what my parents said. And I think about the things that they had to go through as, young people of color coming out of the 60s and the 70s
It's rough.
when the world was just overtly bad to you at some instances.
Yeah.
But they still persevered and they still laughed and they still loved and they fought and they weren't afraid to fight, which people think you're not supposed to fight. No, we are going to have differences of opinion, but we have to respect each other enough to be able to know that we have a difference of opinion and try to find the middle ground as opposites. Nowadays people get into fights where they promote this and they have no resolution. I mean, we see it on reality TV, we see it on Facebook. People promote this stuff, and it's really communication. And one thing that my parents taught me, and this is a really important lesson, is to listen. Just listen. Are you communicating by sharing a thought and then listening to see if someone's has a different opinion, or are you waiting for your turn to talk? That's important.
Well, they raised a lovely man. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And you apparently learned some incredible lessons from them young. Um, you live in Indiana, and this was a question I was going to ask earlier, and I was listening and I didn't ask. You live in Indiana now, and you moved from
Yes.
Detroit. Was that, and that to me is particularly interesting because, as I mentioned when I met you, I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and you live out just outside of Gary in Valparaiso now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
you're from the region, huh?
I am. And I still have people. I think there's people I know there still. Um, well, anyway, that's not about me. Um,
Ye-
anyway, uh, but did you move because of the job, Fronius, or did you move for other reasons?
yes to both of them.
Okay.
So Fronius was moving from Detroit, and I was not inclined to come to this area because I've passed through here on my way to Chicago, and I never saw anything of significance. It was
Right.
just like trucks and refineries and truck stops and corn and soy. Ugh.
And Detroit and Gary are not that different.
Yeah, well, I lived in Detroit until I was about somewhere about before 17 because I was back and forth between the suburbs and Detroit during that my teenage years. And so I moved out to Canton, Michigan,
Okay.
which is between Detroit and Ann Arbor for most of my adult life in Michigan. But then my marriage that I had previously suddenly took a turn for the worse. So we were empty nesters. My ex-wife and I were in our mid 40s, so life starts to change.
Hmm.
And and like I learned this lesson: when a woman says she's done, she's done. So we were divorcing, and this opportunity came up, and they kept asking me, "Hey, do you want? We really want you to come to Indiana with us because you have some skill sets that we need to develop this and build up this force." And as I thought about it, And they also gave me a little help along the way. And I was like, I don't have anything to lose. My children are grown, are adults. My marriage is kind of dissolving. So what do I have to keep me here?
Mhm.
And it was coming out, it was like 2010. We're coming out of that recession. I'm like, hey, let's go be a butterfly. Let's get in this cocoon and come out anew. So
Mhm.
that's exactly what I did. I literally have a totally different life than I had. Like it's literally like I had another life. And now I've been reborn again.
It's
But I
interesting.
still have my beautiful daughters.
Oh, and that's important.
Oh, yes.
Do you see another life coming to another region, or will you stay there?
No, I'll definitely get out of here. You know why? Right now it is -5 degrees here.
Mhm.
-5. My bones cannot take it. I am going somewhere where it's moderate, maybe where there's water because I am a water person. If I am not near a large body of water, my I'm not quite right. So the goal is to finish this portion of my life here and then move somewhere where it's more temperate.
You
That's
have
it.
Lake Michigan there. That's a large body of water.
I understand that, but I am by a large body of water, but people here aren't vibrationally like they are by a large body of water. That's the best way I can put that.
And Lake Michigan does freeze, unlike the oceans. So,
Yes.
um,
I just need some warmth. I mean,
I
it is
understand. I
it's
understand.
so cold, so cold.
I understand. And I'm interested in the progression of change and how it affected your journey too, which is why I was asking, because I think when we geographically move, it does impact us and how we put our message out. So that's interesting to hear. It was like a whole new chapter for you.
Yeah, for me, actually, it was more of it drove me more because literally where I live, there's nothing to do. I
Interesting. Yeah.
we have I'll give you this, like 3 weeks ago, I came home, my wife was on the couch, the kids were gone, and it's like, "Hey, let's do this." They're like, "That's closed." "Oh, that's all the way in Chicago." "Well, that's in Madison, Wisconsin." So, like, where I'm at, there's nothing to do. I mean, here's what there's to do in Northwest Indiana: Menards, church, go to eat,
Mall.
drink, mall, repeat, and Netflix.
You could work out.
I do work out, but
I know.
I do a I do a 5 by 5 workout.
I'm
5
not.
by 5,
I understand. And the
and
reason
that takes 40 minutes.
I understand. I understand. I'm just trying to defend all the areas of our beautiful, beautiful globe. Um,
It's great in the summertime. I can ride my bike, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of lakes, but winter,
it's brutal. I understand. I do. What would you like people to know that I haven't already asked and that you've had an opportunity to talk about?
I am waiting for you. I'm waiting to meet you, I'm waiting to touch you, and I don't mean like in a creepy way. It means none of that. I mean, I'm ready to touch your life. I'm ready for you to touch my life. I'm ready to experience it all, and I'm want to share that energy with you to how wonderful this is. Like when I meet people, I am so happy. Like when I met you, you saw I was like bubbling inside. It's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like a kid who is just dropped off in the best daycare ever. I'm like, oh, look at all the humans. Oh my God, they're so wonderful. Let's go play. That's how I am about life. Let's go play and see what we can create and come up with. Let's see how we can enhance and make people happy, make people say, "Oh, aha, that's what it is." So I'm waiting for you guys to recognize that I've already recognized you.
Okay. So, with that, tell all those beautiful people that are going to take up that call and find you where you like to hang out. Where's the best place they can reach you? I'll have it
So
all in
you
the show notes.
So you can reach me at emmittmuckles.com. That's EMMITTMUCKLES.com. That's my website. But a lot of people are on Facebook nowadays. So you can go to Emmitt's Billionaire Lifestyle or the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast on Facebook, have a page. On Twitter, it's capital E, small Muckles. I'm on Twitter, Pinterest. All you have to do is type in E Muckles and I will come up. Or
Where do you
Emmitt
hang
Muckles.
out? I'm sorry. Where do you hang out?
Right now, next to the heat register in Northwest Indiana because it's so cold.
Online, silly.
A lot of times I'm on WhatsApp because I can talk to people around the world on WhatsApp. But mostly it's Twitter. When I want to find out anything and when I want to find out that's current, I go to Twitter.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, but Facebook has gotten weird lately. I like a couple thousand friends, but sometimes it's almost like watching television where it is not high level, high energy stuff. It's low energy information. So, a lot of times, oh yeah, and LinkedIn. So Emmitt Muckles on LinkedIn. I'm starting to really like LinkedIn because it's a better experience. It's a cleaner experience. It's a more informative experience. And I like information. And I can get to see people and people can just be like, oh, you're interesting to me. Let's reach out. Let's maybe sometime, somehow work together on something. But what LinkedIn says is, I'm aware of you. So I want you to know that. That's what I liked about LinkedIn. I'm getting more and more involved with 2018 with LinkedIn.
Okay. So we'll have all of that in your in the show notes, and people will read that billboard. They'll hear the call and they'll come knocking for you.
That's awesome.
Okay.
That is so awesome. Because I am always looking for, if you've done it, if you're doing it, if you're doing that thing that makes you happy, if you're doing that thing that makes your heart glow, makes you feel good in your solar plexus, it says, this is me. And I'm not talking about that thing that you might be making money at or paying the bills with. I'm just talking about the thing that makes you happy, you finding some success with that. Reach out to me because you have somebody that you need to influence and say that it is available to you, that it can happen. It is not strictly about a job. It is about living your billionaire lifestyle, which is from your heart, from your mind, from your soul.
Thank you, Emmitt. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
talking with you today.
Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it so much.
We'll talk soon. Okay,
All right.
listeners.